So this is a story about a young couple where the wife is about to give birth to a baby. They went to see their doctor. The doctor says, we have a new technology. We have a technology that will allow us to transfer the pain of childbirth from the mother to the father. Would you like to avail yourself of this technology? Well, this couple is very much in love, and the young man says, absolutely. And so the lady goes into labor. They strap the young man into this chair. The doctor says, you know that men have a much lower tolerance of pain than women, so we're going to do this very gradually. Let's start with 10%. So they turn the knob up to 10%, and the young woman says, that feels a little better. And the guy says, no problem. So they go up to 20%. He says, oh, that feels noticeably better. And 30%. Go up to 90% and 100%. The young lady has a painless childbirth. They take this beautiful baby home, and there on the porch is the mailman, dead. The Radio Club really is an incredible group and a very eclectic one. And just think about it, look around the room, and we have people who are engineers, scientists, lawyers, marketing people, regulators, hams of both kinds, if you've heard Dr. Schneider introduce us. And yet, the club has managed to be cohesive and to perform a number of really important functions, including preserving the history, teaching youngsters about radio and scholarships, as well as the camaraderie that's represented by this meeting and all the other meetings that happen throughout the world. And so they could have an identity crisis, but that really has been part of our whole industry. Because if you think about it, radio was never really invented. If you read my history of radio just kind of appeared, it just grew. It started out with a bunch of people like Ørsted, Hertz, Maxwell, and little by little they discovered this phenomenon of electromagnetic waves, which of course nobody had ever heard of before, and eventually turned that into a commercial product. And it's the people who commercialized it that got the recognition. And so, depending on what your nationality is, you can select who you want to be the inventor or the father of radio. And so most of us think about Marconi as being the father of radio because he had the absolute best PR group. But Tesla, by the way, Marconi was an Italian who was more English than Italian. Tesla spent most of his life in the US, and in fact, is the only person that has a patent for radio. But if you're Russian, you celebrate Radio Day, and Alexander Popov is the creator of radio. And if you're Indian, it's Charna Bose who created radio. And it continued to evolve. And in fact, if you want another father of radio, the first person to put the voice on radio was Reginald Fessenden. So the Canadians have chimed in. The Chinese have not yet chimed in. But I don't think they care because they're making almost all the radio. So I want to talk to you today. You heard a lot about the cellular telephone. And you know that one way or another, the cellular telephone was one in a succession of revolutions that radio introduced to us. And there are now some 5 billion people in the world who have cell phones. That's really an incredible number. But those revolutions have not stopped. We're about to have a succession of additional revolutions. And I want to talk to you very briefly today about 2 of them. I'm going to talk for about 6 more minutes. That gives me 3 minutes of revolution, and we ought to be able to cover both of those subjects. Well, if I just give you an example of each one. So the first one I want to talk about has to do with healthcare. We all know, or we should know, that our healthcare system is broken. We spent 20% of our gross national product today on healthcare. The projections are that within 5 years that's going up to 30%. And our economy can't sustain that. So something's got to change, and it will. But the worst part of it is that our healthcare system today is dedicated to curing disease. What it should be doing is preventing disease. And so I want to give you an example of how wireless technology is going to solve both of those problems. It's going to introduce a new age where we will anticipate and prevent disease, and in doing so, we'll cut the cost. We'll make people healthier and solve this problem of the largest expense in our gross national product. So what's my example? The physical examination. I have a physical exam every 5 years. I call it the annual exam. And it's essentially worthless. Because what they do in a physical examination is they take a snapshot. They look at your pulse rate, they look at your blood pressure, and a whole bunch of other things. And it's a minor snapshot, none of which has any significance. Why? Because the only thing that's important is how this varies. Everybody is different. A pulse rate of 50 may be normal for one person, and another person may be dying at a pulse rate of 50. What is going to happen sometime in the next 15 or 20 years? I call this a continuous physical examination. You're going to have on your body a device, which I call a personal server. Today we call that the cell phone, but the cell phone is evolved into a really complex device with a whole bunch of different functions, none of them optimally. We're going to have this server, and it will accept a number of devices, one of which will be a really optimal cell phone. And we can talk about this another time, but you've heard me talk about the cell phone that's embedded under your skin and that you talk to. But one of the devices that will feed into this personal server is going to be a patch that you wear. You may have to change it every week or two. In 30 years, that patch is going to be embedded in your body. That patch is going to be measuring 30 or 40 different bodily functions. Those functions will be programmed as a result of your genetic makeup. So this device will transmit all of this information to a computer bank. The computer bank will know all of your history and it will be monitoring you continuously. And it will tell you ahead of time. If you're about to have a congestive heart failure, which is the biggest heart attack cause that occurs today, they'll let you know 8 hours or 10 hours ahead of time and give you a chance to pop a pill and avoid going to the hospital. More minor things, if you're eating too much, this thing will monitor your calorie intake and your output on a continuing basis and remind you when they serve dessert up. Maybe you should skip it.
Don't like that one. Don't like that one.
Sorry for that. You can skip the main course. And I don't want to go into a huge amount of detail, but it sounds like I'm type reading. And yet every device that I just mentioned, all the measurement, all the technology for transmitting, the measurement for analyzing, all of that exists today. There are a few details that have to be resolved. Amazingly enough, you don't have to detail the legal details, the regulatory, but they are going to get solved, and we are going to solve this healthcare problem. So let me talk about what I think is a much bigger problem.